What's up, guys? I'm your block here with Mr. Eric Fosnat, all the way from Cleveland. Eric, where are we at right now?
Medellin, Colombia.
Let's go, baby. Medellin, Colombia. Eric, I want to ask you a few questions, get to know a little bit, why you're here, because there's a reason why you're here. So first thing, what brought you back to Medellin, Colombia?
Well, I have a lot of love for this city. I have a lot of love for the country, but this trip specifically, we are here for our annual team retreat. Flew out the marketing team, parts of our painting company team as well, to have basically like a leadership event, grow them as leaders, have an opportunity to connect, not just virtually, and develop them as people and leaders. Yeah,
I think it's important when you run a remote team, right? The way you have over how many team members do you have now?
Like 13, I believe, between both. Not including our painters, but office team.
13, so, and then once a year you guys come together, and then you've done this now 2 years in a row in Medellin, Colombia, right?
Yep.
Amazing. So over the last 3 years, what were the hardest lessons that you've had to endure to get to the point where now you're in this mansion, flying out your team, and being able to, take care of yourself and obviously your team members? 4 years. Actually.
Yep, it was 4 years in January. I'd say one of the hardest parts was like this last year, and actually, as weird as it sounds, like seeing a decline in revenue for the first time ever really since starting, and figuring out how to manage cash flow, expectations, team members, salaries, expenses, where before it's always been just like money's there and you can just kind of spend inappropriately and like it's fine because it's growing and everything's great. Well, like now if things actually decline a little bit, you actually have to manage cash flow very carefully, especially starting another business that takes cash flow up front. Just managing that was a whole different beast.
I love that, because a lot of people talk about just scale, but they don't talk about the other side when you start another business, which we'll talk about. And then obviously, enduring, because you still have team members to pay for and people want to get paid better and bonuses and things like that. So then put pressure on you to figure out sales and marketing and everything else. So like, what are you doing differently going into this year to make sure that revenue is back up and actually growing both the painting company and the marketing agency?
Yeah, one of the things we've been talking about at this event is how this last year was very foundational. Like we kind of had to get our butt kicked a little bit to get the right team and the structure and the systems in place to be able to scale. And the really cool part is now, like most of our team has been here with the company for a year, 2 years, 3 years. So like they really understand their roles. Like we're set up, we have bandwidth, we can scale without having to bring on a lot of additional team members.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing right now is that us three, the person behind the camera and us two, we've been in each other's lives in a sense for now over 3 years. So I think that's pretty cool. What are your 2 tips for people that are hiring remote team members this year in 2024? Because I think every year has been a little bit different, not like drastically different, but like going into 2024, they're hiring their first 2 remote team members. Like, what are your 2 most important tips?
Culture over everything. You can find better talent than you think. It's not just English speakers that can be organized and do decent tasks, but there's actually real talent and skill sets. And that's becoming more of a thing as hiring overseas and hiring remote is becoming more popular. It's becoming more of a real thing. And that's a massive opportunity for people that people aren't seeing yet.
You and I always talk about culture. Like, what does that word mean to you? When someone says, what's culture for a company? What's a good culture? What's your culture? What does that look? What does that look like? And what does that mean?
To me, culture is that invisible force that you can't really see, but you can feel, right? Within the company, it's the life of it, right? A lot of people would lean to core values for it. I would as well, but it's not limited to only that, right? It extends beyond that, but core values are a great place to start.
How can someone tell on an interview if someone's going to be a good culture fit? Like, what does that look like? What is that? Because you've not done hundreds of interviews, you've hired a lot of people.
Like situational questions, right? One of my favorite frameworks in interview questions, especially for culture stuff, is tell me about a time when. If I'm looking for a culture fit of do they take ownership, right? Tell me about a time where you totally messed something up and you had to just admit it and go in and fix it. What was the situation? What was the end outcome of it all, right? So asking questions that get them to tell me stories into who they really are, what they've accomplished, like what their values are. And obviously, I mean, it takes a level of EQ and reading between the lines and some of that stuff too.
What are some of the things that you've done to keep your core team members with you for over 3 years?
Care about them.
Okay, I love that. I mean, actually, that's
at its core, it's that simple, right? I mean, it goes beyond that, but I think it's just like in sales, like the best salesperson is the one that really, really cares about the other person on the other end making the best decision. The best person at retaining their team is the person that just really, really cares about that individual in terms of their happiness, their growth, their potential. Like, you just really, really care. The rest of it comes easily, but it's investing in their growth. It's investing in their personal development, their leadership. It's pouring into them as people outside of their careers and inside of their careers.
Yeah, just caring more than other people in business have cared for them. Biggest lesson from 2023. Biggest lesson from the marketing agency and biggest lesson from the painting company, because I feel like you have two different lives around those two.
The biggest lessons from the marketing company this year are, yes, like financials are important, like having a very firm grasp on cash flow and not just having it be this loose thing you sort of understand, but cash flow, where's money going? What does it actually look like? How much money does it take to actually service a client, and the actual like financial numbers of the business? Because ultimately that's what determines whether you stay in business or not. Beyond that, it's like having the right foundation set up to scale or to set up for growth, right? And empowering team members to be the best version of themselves, giving them the space to go and run and create.
And help them win.
Yeah, and help them win. Like there's been plenty of times where because of the painting company, I've just like not really been involved with a marketing company, and it's created that accidental space for team members to go and run with stuff, and it's what's allowed them to like grow and create new things and create a better company.
And for the painting company,
the biggest lesson was that managing different types of people is very different, right? Managing the marketing person in the States that makes $5,000 a month, and even the overseas person that makes $1,000, $1,500 a month is much different than managing the painter in the United States, the blue collar worker that makes $3,000 or less a month. It's a much different like archetype of human, and learning how to adapt like management and leadership styles to make both types successful.
Is it also hard because you're working with people that are like, a lot of times I feel like older than you, and like they have families in the US, and like, is there a different connection that you feel to them than someone like in Latin America? Like what makes it harder? Because you have
the painters?
Yeah.
Not so much that, like a little bit that can be the case on first impressions, but once they hear me talk, they're like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. It's more so like their background. They're just not as polished. Right? They're extremely talented, but in different ways that the conventional office worker isn't, in terms of their organization, their communication, some of that stuff, right? These people have worked blue collar jobs all their lives in super unorganized, chaotic, like pretty miserable, awful work environments. And now bringing that in and just realizing some of those things that the regular person that's worked an office job for a year just naturally knows how to do, these people don't. And you just got, it's just different.
What was the hardest transition of going from running a marketing agency fully remote to running a painting company? Because you didn't have to do that. This was a challenge that I think you took upon yourself, and it was something that you wanted to prove to the industry, you wanted to prove to yourself, to your team, and it was just like, obviously you had many reasons, but what was the hardest transition? Because I know part of it has to do going from remote to working in person, but I don't know if that was the hardest part.
Being confined to one area.
Yeah.
Being stuck in Cleveland, which I love Cleveland. It's where I was born and raised. I have so much pride from being from Northeast Ohio. But being stuck there, not being able to leave on a Friday for a long weekend, being disconnected from my friends and community, and that was by far the hardest part. More tactically inside of the business, the hardest part was figuring out production. I understood marketing, I understand sales, I understood recruiting, I understood ops, I understood all those things, but understanding like how does production work so that then I can coach painters on how to be successful. I didn't know how to paint. So it was a whole new thing.
I think the problem is also you've been traveling for a year. And we went to Mexico and Colombia and Costa Rica. We already got the travel bug in you, and then you're like, oh, nope, just kidding. I'm gonna get stuck here for 9 months, build a business that's not profitable for a long time, and just like learn and get slapped in the face. But now it's finally like, I feel like coming together going into 2024.
It is, and it's not even as much like the travel, don't get me wrong, like yes, it's part of it, but it's almost more so like the community than anything. It's the community, it's the culture, the people you're around. Like my community is here. I have more friends in Medellin than I have in any city in the US. Like I have no friends in Cleveland. I just have a couple family members, like one friend. You know, it's like my community is here. It's that more than it is the travel. If you took everybody from Medellin to Cleveland, I could tolerate it.
For sure, for sure. Last thing, so top 3 goals for 2024.
So we did goal setting a little differently this year, where we did it much more broken out by math and almost more projections than goals. So like very weird specific numbers. Like for the painting company, we should sell just over 1 million and produce just over 900,000. And the marketing company, we should do like 1.2 in retainer revenue. But that's just like if we hit our KPIs, like those aren't stretch goals in anything. That's just like what we should be on track to do. Beyond that, more goals that don't like necessarily have like an action plan in terms of numbers and data is I'd love to at least open up the 2nd location, if not the 3rd in 2024.
Not in Cleveland though, right?
No, adjacent markets.
What about
or
your
other markets.
personal goals? Like, for what do you want to achieve for 2024?
I set this weird goal for myself to run the painting business, spending at least 4 or 5 months out of the country.
It's possible.
Be able to do it remote. Yeah, we're on pace to do so.
Yeah.
So we're
I like that.
We're starting off right. So
yeah, and come to Colombia more than once every year.
Exactly. Get to spend more time with my people, my community.
Yes,
So.
absolutely. Eric, pleasure as always. Boom. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe. See you soon.